There were two reports yesterday. One of them said that Iran has hit two super tankers that belong to UAE. And the United States was trying, as IRGC announced, that they were trying to, they said in that announcement that these two tankers were deceived by the United States that they're going to have a safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Then Iran warned them, they didn't listen, and they went in on a route full of mines, and they got hit by missiles. And this is, I don't know what was the situation in the Strait. Last night, we've learned that the United States is trying to force some of these super tankers into the Strait in order to penetrate the blockade of Iran, or somehow the control of Iran on the Strait.
Well, now the Iranians have closed the Strait, and so have the Americans. So nothing is allowed to go through. And the Iranians, as you rightly pointed out, are using missiles. They're no longer just giving warnings or at most firing a drone. They're hitting the ships with missiles, and so that the other ships that are still in the Strait, or sorry, in the Persian Gulf, or outside in the Sea of Oman, that they stay clear of the Strait of Hormuz. And also, for the first time, Iran, by hitting Oman, a lot of American assets that were being used against Iran were destroyed. And Iran took the Americans by surprise, and Oman by surprise, because they allowed the Americans to do this. And that damage has made it much easier for the Iranians to be able to strike these tankers that refuse to abide by the demands of the Iranian Navy. So, Nima, this is not a war that the Americans can win, and Iran is hitting back very hard. And Trump says he's going to hit very hard. He said last night he'll hit hard, and tonight I'm sure the Iranians are going to continue to hit back very hard. And each day that goes by, the shortage of energy grows, the shortage of other supplies grow, and the world moves closer towards an economic crisis, something that Trump himself said. It's not as if he's ignorant of all this. He literally pointed it out when in the United States, people among the political elites were attacking him for signing the MOU, which was clearly a text that favored Iran.
There are people arguing, why did Iran decide to sign MOU, criticizing Iran for this and that. And there are some internal and external concerns on the part of Iranian, those decision makers. And one of them is that it's not just about the United States benefiting from the MOU or the situation after the signing of the MOU. It was Iran as well using that. One of the reports came out today on Washington Examiner. It says that in 26 days between the signing of the US-Iran MOU and the recent reinstatement of the US blockade, Tehran shipped more than $6 billion worth of oil products and to foreign buyers. This is that. What is the sentiment on the part of Iranians? Well, how do they feel? I'm talking about those decision makers, those people who are, involved in the negotiation, in the talks, or were involved in the negotiations.
There are different views. There are some who say we shouldn't have signed any deal, and they believe that we should have continued the war, and they have their own argument to make. They said that the Americans were on the back foot. We should just have continued until they capitulated. Those who were in favor of sanctions were saying, well, we too were in need of supplies. We were in need of money to support the population, to support the armed forces, and to support our allies across the region. But even among those who were in favor of negotiations, there were two, let's say, different views. Some were saying they should have gained more concessions, and some were saying that this is enough. I personally think we could have had more concessions, and I think that my opinion, as you know, when we've discussed this offline during the past few months. My opinion was that we should have continued the war for a few more days, the 39, 40-day war. And I also think that we should have signed the MOU a couple of weeks later to put increased pressure on the United States over the oil market. But that was my opinion. But there were others who were saying, well, the Iranian government needs money to run the country, and our allies across the region need financial support. And my belief is that we've probably sold significantly more than $6 billion worth of oil. But in any case, I think that on the whole, though, the Iranians had the upper hand with regards to the MOU, because during this period, the Iranians very swiftly, Iran knew that the United States was not going to abide by its commitments. I mean, in all the meetings that I've had or the discussions that I've had with people who are informed or semi-informed, no one believed that the Americans are going to carry out their commitments. Some were more skeptical than others, but in general, no one behind closed doors, I think, or in private conversations had the belief that like Trump was going to push the Israelis. But the argument was we need to buy time. We need to prepare ourselves for the next week, because the consensus, from my understanding, was that this is not over and we're going to have more siege and more warfare. And indeed, we had more siege and more warfare. So, and the Iranians knew that within the framework of the MOU, they could stop cooperating. They don't need to leave the MOU. All they have to do is say, you're not carrying out your commitments, we're not going to carry out ours. And this is where we are today. So the Iranians have stopped cooperating and allowing ships to go through. The Americans have done the same. That's Iran's strongest weapon against the United States. That's what basically forced the Americans to sign the MOU in the first place. So that's one aspect of it. One thing that I also wanted to point out is that there's this question that many raise about why is it that Iran doesn't strike the Israeli regime at the moment? And I think it's pretty clear. The reason is that this is the battle for the Strait. And the Americans have been violating all of their commitments and then creating this corridor in the Strait so that they would undermine Iran's leverage. And once they undermine Iran's leverage, then they don't have to carry out those commitments anymore, because the Iranians have no leverage to force them to do so. So the key was the Strait of Hormuz. And that's why the Iranians have been focusing on the Strait of Hormuz. If Iran loses in the Strait of Hormuz, Trump has the upper hand. If Iran wins in the Strait of Hormuz, Trump is defeated. And so all of the focus has been by the two sides on the Strait of Hormuz. So I think the priority right now is for the country to focus on defeating the United States. And so far, they've done a very, very good job. I don't see any scenario where the United States gets the upper hand. And remember, even if the United States somehow they launch a ground operation in this horrific heat in the Arabian Peninsula, like I guess, I don't know what the temperatures are in Dubai and these other places, but it must be somewhere near, I don't know, 45, 46 degrees. I don't know. But
it's more than that. It's more than that, Professor Mann. It's going to get to 55, 60, something like that.
Well, yeah, and then humidity at 100%. So even if it's 40, it's like 55 in Tehran. I mean, the 100% humidity is just...
Let's say it's Celsius, is not Fahrenheit.
Yes, Celsius, yeah. So assuming that the United States carries out a ground attack, and the Iranians are prepared for a ground attack. Let's say the Americans take this, some islands and take some of the mainland. The Iranians will lob missiles from across the country. And by the way, during the past few days, if you've noticed, the Iranians have not been using long-range missiles. They've been using short-range missiles and lots of drones. And so they are hammering the enemy, but they're not using long-range missiles. But in any case, if the Americans come in for land invasion, it won't make a difference, because Iran can strike the entire Persian Gulf region and anywhere around the Strait of Hormuz from 1,000 from anywhere in Iran. From anywhere in Iran, they can target. So, but the good thing is that during the last night, when the Americans were supposed to hit very hard, and Trump said he's going to hammer Iran hard, Iran hit the U.S. much harder than the United States hit Iran. And last night, Iran has been very um, uh, generous with its missiles and drones. It's been hitting very hard across the board.
Yeah. One of the American officials said that Trump is so serious about, let me bring the article here, as that Trump is so serious about the Strait of Hormuz and controlling the Strait of Hormuz, imposing a 20% toll on cargo transit in the Strait of Hormuz. And one of the American officials said, and what is that? And do they have the capabilities? What is the assessment on the part of? We had Iranian foreign minister responding to Donald Trump. Yeah, whoever controls the Strait of Hormuz has to have that sort of ability to charge the tankers and vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. What is that a new sort of psyop on the part of Donald Trump?
Well, have you seen Rubio's statement from like a couple of weeks ago, where he said taking fees or tolls is unacceptable, and so now Trump himself is saying, "I'm going to take 20%," and who is he going to take 20% from? His own proxies, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Kuwaitis, the Bahrainis. The very same countries who foolishly accompanied him and cooperated with him in carrying out this war. And the biggest losers in this war, the biggest losers are these countries by far. And so they are the biggest losers. And now Trump is saying, I'm going to take 20% from them. And Adolf jokingly said, that's too much. We're going to be fair. In other words, Iran will get a lot less. So what Trump says, if you compare it to what Rubio says, they're the exact opposite, and thus, based on Rubio's statements, that Trump should be condemned. Of course, Rubio says that these are international. This is an international waterway, which is not the case. There's no international waterway. It is not wide enough to be an international waterway. This is Iranian and Omani territorial waters, and no one else's.